Every time I feel like I've had my final playthrough of Manhunt, something always brings me back. If you're new to the channel, hello, I'm Johnny, thrilled to make your acquaintance, and I'm a big fan of the video game Manhunt. Manhunt is a 2003 stealth action game developed by Rockstar North, at the time hot off of the massive success of Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City. You play as James Earl Cash, an inmate being put to death via lethal injection. Our hero. Well, as it turns out, Cash was sedated instead, and when he wakes up, he's told that he's the new star of a snuff film and is being directed via earpiece by Lionel Starkweather, a disgraced former big shot movie maker. Psychopaths in Hollywood is obviously just a parody, of course. You have to stealthily avoid, hunt, and eliminate corrupt cops, pedos wearing Hawaiian shirts, and asylum patients, to include a guy wearing the dress of the wife that he killed. Needless to say, this isn't an uplifting tale. So why return to something so barbaric over and over again? Well, did I mention that you get to butcher pedos? What more do you need? Okay, so there are other things. I love the basic gameplay loop, the cat and mouse mechanics, sneaking through shadows, luring and stalking before executing your ambush. Putting aside all the shocking stuff, it's just a really solid stealth game. The sound design is immaculate, the renderware engine is cozy, the character and level designs are phenomenal, and I've always been a fan of the simple, unflinching storyline set in the Rust Belt of the US, right around where I grew up, actually. I've played the first game many times, and after reviewing both Manhunt titles for the channel, I honestly thought that was enough for this lifetime. I should finally move on. A third game is never coming, and I have a massive backlog of titles to cover. Then I heard about the first-person mod. A very bright mind that goes by the handle Ermacher decided to modify Manhunt so that you can play the game entirely in the first-person perspective. Now, there was a first-person view mode in the base game that allowed you to look around and survey the area, but as soon as you moved, you were back in third person. I couldn't resist. I guess it was like one last itch to scratch. What would it be like to experience the blood sport through the eyes of James Earl Cash? Additionally, I got to play through the glasses of Dr. Daniel Lamb. That's right, I played through Manhunt 2 in first person as well. Uncensored, by the way. Stick around. Before we start, I'd like to extend a heartfelt thank you to Ermacher. Thank you for keeping these games playable and fresh, something Rockstar couldn't care less about. Okay, one last request. If you're liking this video, please push the little like button. It helps circulate the video around, and it means a lot to me. Thank you. Man, games are art. I know you want to see the rough stuff, and we'll get there. But first, I have to acknowledge just how much I love the world that Rockstar created with Carcer City. Yes, it's dark and grimy, but there's just so much character to Carcer. Most of my life has been spent in the Rust Belt. It's probably why I'm so fascinated with stuff like this. The boarded up pawn shops, the rotting deli, jewelers, and the abandoned mall. It's all so familiar, but in first person, I noticed a lot of little details that I've never really paid attention to. When I look up, I see little apartments above the shuttered businesses, and a few lights are on too. I even see a few plants. Now look, it's a texture. I doubt that there's much more to it, but I like adding layers. And even in the worst, most crime-ridden areas of the world, regular people still live there. I've driven through some shitty parts of Detroit, Allentown, and Gary.
Gary!
It's the idea that unspeakable things are happening on the streets of Carcer, but normal people are stuck here, just trying to survive and hopefully not get involved. So it's basically Gary.
Uh, Gary.
Unlike the games like Blood Trail or Hatred, Manhunt doesn't depend on plain edgy shock value. Carcer City is absolutely a character in the game, arguably the most important one. The structures around you are suffocating. Towering, oppressive masses of concrete, rusting metal, burned out cars, trash, and heavy industrial equipment are everywhere. Just murdering your way through the dying American Midwest, that's Manhunt. Downtown Carcer has a bit of neon and a few shops that actually appear to be functional, but it's just as seedy and hopeless. Stalled construction sites, adult book and movie shops, and a sad, worn-down casino. You can just imagine the remnants of the local workforce piling in at the end of the week to waste away on a Saturday night. Like I said, I grew up around all this stuff. As a matter of fact, the video store where my brother and I rented Manhunt for the first time was right off of Michigan Avenue, and it was a lot like Carcer. Shady pawn shops, sleazy titty bars, and never-ending construction in progress, and always a factory or two off in the distance. You can always feel the desperation in places like that, and in more ways than one, it felt like an entirely different world than the one we're accustomed to here. But not everything is so dreary all the time, and Manhunt still has plenty of that slightly offbeat but still plausible Rockstar humor. I noticed a little stand in the gift shop at the Carcer City Zoo that had been selling albums with chimp mating calls. I've walked by this dozens of times over the years, but I guess I never stopped to read this goofy shit. This kind of stuff is everywhere in Grand Theft Auto, of course, but I'm glad they kind of sprinkled a little levity around Manhunt when they could. There are other little details too, like "This really fucking hurts" printed on the weird EEG electroshock machine in the asylum. I don't know how I never noticed that before. Then we have the more extravagant interiors, like Starkweather's mansion. This is probably the last time I'll play Manhunt until I say that again in 2 years, so I really wanted to take my time and soak this up. I love the moody paintings of a harbor, the sumptuous furniture, gaudy chandelier medallions, and the gigantic portraits of the head creep himself. You can just imagine the lavish parties that took place here before Starkweather became the scum of the earth. But alright, I fear you might be yawning at this point, so let's get into the nasty stuff. It's not that I never noticed these things, but walking around in first person made them more pronounced, and it wasn't pleasant. The executions are, of course, intense and the star of the show, but Manhunt has moments, quiet moments, where if you really stop to look, you'll find the really disturbing stuff. Cash's beta model fried on the electric chair, the still living body in a body bag jump scare, a headless body in the mall bathroom slumped over on a toilet, the bound victim in Pigsy's bathtub, and then there's this room. This room always rubbed me the wrong way. Years later, and far more desensitized, I'm afraid to say, this room still makes me kind of uneasy. Blood-soaked mattresses with handprints, bodies vacuum sealed in thick black bags, and 2 obese corpses strung up. And being fat isn't for nothing. If you look closely in first person, you'll see the gooey yellow adipose tissue pouring out of the crude incision. Now, if you look carefully, this is just Pigsy's model with some alterations, but still, depending on how much of this scene you want to recreate in your mind, this can be pretty rough. In the second forced hand-to-hand fight, take a moment to consider the context. The film lights and the cameras pointing at the mandatory murder are dark enough, but you come out on top. The gore and filth all over the floor, however, implies that many victims have been pummeled to death for the depraved audience in this very room. But how is the Pigsy fight in first person, I hear you say? It's terrifying. What do you think? Especially on hardcore difficulty, where your map is removed and you can't see exactly where this big bastard is lurking, the battle is intense. And when you're cornered in a small room with this animal sniffing you out, big Pigsy hog just swinging in the breeze, it's not pleasant. But alright, let's get up to a bit of the old ultra-violence, me droogs. Yeah, executions in first person are expectedly a little hard to watch. If it's not been made apparent yet, I've played Manhunt many times over the years. I've seen these executions from the third person dozens of times, but they're another level of depraved in first person. Ermacher's mod is really cool. You can play in first person, but you can keep the third person VHS executions if you like, or you can choose to keep the first person view the whole way through. Some of the first-person executions are busted. The camera clips right through the hunter model and obscures what's going on, which is unfortunate but totally acceptable given that the game wasn't designed for this. But I'm genuinely amazed at how well this view works for the majority of the executions. Seeing Cash's beefy arms crudely wrangle a blackjack around a guy's neck before you hear that god-awful crack of a cervical spine going kablooey. Haha, boys will be boys. Then you look down and you see the guy's best impression of a barn owl. Watching Cash swing a crowbar like a baseball bat into the side of a dude's neck makes Gordon Freeman look like some nerdy MIT graduate. Wait. There are little details that you just wouldn't be able to appreciate from third person. When you knock a hunter to his knees, you'll see his eyes looking up at you right before the final strike. Now, whether it's hope that you'll spare him or that he's quietly accepting his fate is up to your interpretation, but either way, this view is way more intense. This also makes the gory bits a lot more pronounced. Smashing a hunter's face with a bat has always been super ugly, but seeing the remaining teeth and the final terrified look in his remaining eye as he slumps over is honestly disturbing. The graphics are obviously well past their sell-by date, and even in 2003 the renderware engine had already been surpassed. And again, before the Lords of Edge come out to name drop games with more gore, like it's some well-kept secret, more gore and better graphics are not as important as context. Yeah, the mindless violence in gore games is pretty nifty the first time you see it. It's all like, whoa, but then what? It's just a series of animations for the sake of shocking and attracting the hot topic kids. The why of this is much more important as far as lasting impact. Why do I care if some generic toolbag character is mindlessly wandering around wasting everyone? In real life, sure, that would be terrifying. Just look at San Bernardino. But in a video game, it's meaningless without context. Ruthlessly sawing through a supremacist's neck with a length of wire while listening to some greasy fat dude reach climax in your ear from his mansion's goon cave is, well, significantly more unsettling. And it's all the more unpleasant when you're doing it from the eyes of old Jimbo here. So yeah, the executions are grisly in first person, but James can indulge in other fun and frivolity across Carcer. Hand-to-hand combat, for instance. Look, Manhunt never had the best fight mechanics, and it wasn't supposed to. Cash isn't Jackie Chan. He's not a highly trained martial artist that disowned his gay daughter, but he can throw hands. He's a bruiser, and his fighting style is akin to something like 52 blocks. And, as I said, it's done on purpose. If you could do spinning back kicks and choke slams, you wouldn't have an incentive to stalk and execute. Anyway, I thought fighting in first person would suck, but it's shockingly intuitive. And it works just as well with melee weapons. Bludgeoning a thug is harsh, and staring down at your enemy as he begs for his life is nasty, even if he deserves it. But it's not all pokey pokey smashy smashy. The shooting mechanics in Manhunt have always been contentious. Some people absolutely hate them. Some people enjoyed them for what they were. But, like the brawling, FPS gameplay translates very, very well to Manhunt. It fundamentally changes the gameplay in the gun-heavy levels, and I can't believe how fun and natural it is. Now, nail gun fights are just good old blue-collar fun, but handgun headshots are a one-hitter, and because of this, you really can play Manhunt as more of a traditional FPS. It's fast and genuinely thrilling, especially because cash can get folded quickly. The only caveat is that this is still a third-person game with cover mechanics. You can use cover, just tap space, but when you pop out, you have to manually swing the camera around. By then, you've already taken a ton of damage. Now, how do you fix this? It's simple. Don't fucking suck. Alright, well, it would have actually been amazing if there was a way to transition back to third person and cover a la Rainbow Six Vegas, but there's me just dreaming away. The real trick is just to be aggressive. When you're running full tilt, blasting and laughing so long that even your mama thinks that your mind is gone, Manhunt makes for a surprisingly natural first-person shooter. And like the executions, seeing stuff like shotgun fights up close is particularly brutal. I said this in my original review, but I vividly remember the first time I pulled a headshot in this game with a shotgun. This was in 2003, and I hadn't played Soldier of Fortune just yet, so this legitimately kinda shocked me. And seeing this effect without the obstruction of Cash's character model is truly monstrous. Now, this has long been surpassed. I would point you to Rockstar's own Red Dead Redemption 2, but this is still really punchy in Manhunt. But it's nothing compared to the finale. The Starkweather fight plays out the same. Wait until Fat Boy runs out of ammo and unleash your inner Leatherface. But I always thought the final execution was simply a cutscene. How wrong I was. The coup de grace is in first person, and watching Starkweather's gelatinous innards slither out of his abdominal wound as he tries to stuff them back in is extremely unpleasant, but it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. So, you can probably tell that I have a lot of love for Manhunt. It was bold and daring for its time, which is saying something considering the pedigree of the developer from whence it came. But it's not all perfect. The crane section has always been, and will always be, terrible. This has nothing to do with the first-person mod. I just wanted to take one final public swipe at this god-awful segment. I've beaten this game well over a dozen times, and the crane section has always been cheeks. Wrong Side of the Tracks is another scene that can be pretty grating. It is a little bit better in first person, but it's still incredibly frustrating to be doing okay and then suddenly get stitched up by 3 cops with Uzis. The same thing can happen in Starkweather's garden and in his mansion, and some of the checkpoints, especially late in the game, can be really frustrating. Then there's the fact that this game has the potential to be a pain in the prick to get running on modern operating systems. I mean, perish the thought that Rockstar put any effort into maintaining a product that they sell for real money. Alright, I suppose this is the time I should shoot my shot. Nobody from Rockstar Games is going to watch this video, and even less will give this consideration, but if they do, please consider remastering Manhunt. I know it's not easy, I know it's not cheap, but maybe try to find a way. Fans of this series haven't had but a crumb since 2007, and we're starving. Or make a third game. Hell, let me write the damn thing. I come pretty cheap, and pretty frequently. Whoa!
Oh, come on! I was just having a laugh.
Alright, once more into the fray. I had to do it. Manhunt 2 is certainly unique, if nothing else. There really is no other game like it, for many reasons. Firstly, there's the controversy. In the months leading up to release, Manhunt 2 was being sold as the most violent video game ever made. I read every article. I remember it very well. Then, the BBFC refused to classify the game with a rating. No Manhunt 2 in the UK. And thank goodness, because, as you know, video games are their biggest problem right now. The very same day, the ESRB slapped the game with an adults-only rating. No major retailers in the States carry AO games, and the big console manufacturers refuse to allow AO games on their systems. Therefore, no Manhunt 2 in the US. The game was dead before it even got off the blocks. In order to even get the thing out, Rockstar had to get rid of the end-of-level rating system, cut multiple executions out, and put an ugly, god-awful filter over the remaining executions to heavily obscure them. These changes were enough to satisfy the all-knowing ratings boards, and the game launched Halloween of 2007. Of course, trustworthy public servants like Hillary Clinton and Leland Yee still complained that it would be damaging to the children and demanded that Manhunt 2 be banned permanently. Oh, and Leland Yee also pleaded guilty to felony racketeering and gun trafficking charges. He purchased automatic weapons and shoulder-fired missiles from the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF. Remember, there are more of us than there are of them. But alright, enough has been made of the controversy around Manhunt 2, considering it's in every fucking YouTube title. But what about the game? Specifically, how does Manhunt 2 play in first person? Well, not as well as the first game, and how appropriate, considering that the second game overall is a major step down from Manhunt 1. In the first game, you could look around freely like any traditional first-person game. In Manhunt 2, you can play the whole game in first person, but you have to hold Z to look around freely. It gets really tiresome having to stop and press another key just to look up or down at something. It's really bizarre. Other little issues include Danny's glasses clipping in and out when sprinting, which was a minor annoyance. Many more of the executions are broken and hard to see, with models clipping like crazy. However, it's hard to complain because, again, the game wasn't meant to be played like this, and the modder clearly did the best they could with what they had, and it's still really cool to play in this perspective. My issues with Manhunt 2 are legacy problems that came baked into the game's DNA, and no amount of first-person modding is going to fix them. Manhunt 2 had a really complicated development cycle from what it sounds like, and it had to be passed off to another team to be finished after Rockstar Vienna, the game's original developer, was closed. Obviously, I wasn't there, so who knows how things really went down, but the fact is, a completely different team was handed a mess of a project and then told to fix it and finish it. Then, they had to pare everything down visually to get the game running on the PSP. Apparently, it was going to look a lot better originally, and man, I would love to see that build. The point is, Manhunt 2 has this air of a project with multiple, unfocused visions that kinda got sloppily duct taped together. Quite frankly, between this and all the controversy, it's kind of a miracle that Manhunt 2 got released at all. But the lack of polish and cohesion is really evident when you play the game. The story is derivative. Big Fight Club influence, and the hypnosis sequence is ripped straight from the parallax view. It's not even subtle. And the characters are lame. Subjectively so, I know. I know that Danny and Leo have their fans. I've seen enough of the weird fan fiction involving these two, and I respect your opinion. I do. But they're lame. Outside of the deviants, who are incredibly well designed and really creepy, the remainder of the gangs are simply forgettable. They lack the character and diversity of personalities that each group had in the first game, which is a shame because seeing the gangs of Manhunt in first person gives you a great look at their character models in motion, something that's just not that appealing with Part 2. Boring, generic goons with stock banter and a bevy of yeehaw redneck cliches. In the middle of a gunfight, they'll shout things like, "Buy American." Like, this game was so very clearly written during the second Bush Jr. term, and that's fine if art reflects the times, but it just comes off as lazy and without nuance. This is Rockstar, man, and it was Rockstar in the mid-2000s when they were a juggernaut of creativity. There aren't even any boss-type characters. No Pigsy, no Ramirez, and no, Pikmin does not count. Guns are introduced early, way earlier than Manhunt 1. They are fun to use, I have to admit, and shooting works well with the first-person mod. The problem is, once guns are incorporated, they're super prominent throughout the rest of the game. Granted, you don't always have to use them, but it's just so much more convenient to blast your way through the boring enemies and the boring levels and move on. The headshots are cartoonishly over the top, with each firearm leading to a bright red geyser all the time. The mod is great though, it lets you scale this back in the config file, but the original game shipped like this. The interactive executions, where you need to move your mouse a certain way during the ambush, stink. This was a terrible idea. It might have been novel to do these with the nunchuck and the Wiimote, but they're absolutely horrible on mouse and keyboard. Thankfully, they can be disabled, which I would recommend, so I can't whine too much. I can whine about the levels, however. So credit has to be given. A few of the settings, like the ultra greasy XXX Theater, the TV MK Studios, and the genuinely unsettling Deviant Club, are excellent and memorable. Classic Manhunt stuff. But levels like the Sugar Factory, the big corporate project high-rise buildings, and the god-awful storage facility are all peak banality. They're bland, boring, and lame. In particular, the storage facility where Leo has to go around burning the records makes me rage with the fire of 1,000 suns. Oh, it's just so fun getting downed by a cattle prod to then be stomped over and over without any iframes. Oh, it was great. Seriously, whoever decided on this design, I hope you stub your toe today. Your pinky toe. Then there are the makeshift executions like the jerry can lure. Imagine if this concept had been expanded upon. Using items in your environment to rig your own traps, it could have been incredible, but nah. And that's Manhunt 2, a big ball of almost wasted potential. I would love to see the original Rockstar Vienna cut, but this is the game that hit store shelves. Oh, speaking of which, that's Manhunt 2's biggest issue overall, the availability or lack thereof. I would love for you to be able to go out and buy this game and make your own opinion and tell me how wrong I am, but this game is incredibly difficult to find. I almost paid $250 to order a CD from Russia. Thank God I did not do that, as I was able to locate a copy for considerably less, but still, it's crazy to think that it comes to that for some people. I'm not sure why Rockstar refuses to publish it on digital storefronts, but my hunch is that they'd probably like to distance themselves from what was essentially a black mark on their excellent record. They still acknowledge the game on their website, but you simply cannot buy this game easily. Then again, Rockstar also has a notoriously awful record of supporting their old games on PC, so perhaps they just don't see the value in it, who knows. But hey, it's not all bad. I don't want to condemn Manhunt 2 as a complete failure. It's not. It has some good stuff, and especially using this first-person mod, there's still plenty of brutal fun to be had. And make no mistake, there are some violent moments in this game. Repeatedly kicking a guy in the groin, walloping him over the head with a manhole cover, and then stuffing him down the pipe is honestly grotesque. Jamming a pen up into a man's chin, running a circular saw across a guy's armpit and then the back of his neck. Ooh. Manhunt 2, especially uncensored and in first person, absolutely surpasses the first game in terms of pure barbarism. It is excessive, but part of the game's charm, if you want to call it that, is the heaping helping of sleaze and violence. Rockstar fully committed, you gotta give them that. Cottonmouth, the game's city, is influenced by many cities in the US, but it has a notable New Orleans flavor at several points. Shades of the French Quarter and certainly homages to Storyville. Filthy adult stores, an old decrepit XXX theater, a seedy brothel, and again, the Deviant Club is a high-quality stage. I need to get this out real quick. The Deviant Club is a memorable, creative area for a gang of despicable creeps for you to stalk and execute. They'll shout hilarious yet creepy dialogue that makes you feel icky. And that's all before you get to the basement level where the real hardcore stuff happens.
Georgie boy, come on in. Jeez, you look like shit.
The filthy version of the hypnosis music makes me feel like I'm wearing a sweater made out of oil. It's thick, heavy, and also has very dark implications about what the project was doing in this dungeon. This is the perfect Manhunt recipe. Disturbing, yet intriguing. You don't want to go into that basement because of how awful it might be.
Who the fuck let you in?
But you have to. When you do go to the basement, it's even worse than you could imagine. But you have to find out why. You need answers to these ugly questions, and it's too late to turn back anyway. And if you die, you're asked if you'd like to continue the treatment, not the game. How much of this is real? How much of this is in Danny's head? Again, the potential. And with regards to Ermacher's mod, everything is so much more intimate and vivid, and it is visceral. Putting you in Danny's shoes makes everything that much more horrible to look at. I guess what I'm trying to say inside of this rant is that Manhunt 2 is a solid enough little game for what it is, but as I said in my review, it's that it could have and should have been so much more. Manhunt was Rockstar's dark horse, but it had a mountain of creative aggression packed into it, a lean, brisk digital nasty made with laser focus and maximum confidence. Manhunt 2, in contrast, feels slipshod. That spark of inspiration is there, but it feels like the project went astray and got cobbled together in the home stretch to just try and recoup some of the cost. All of that together with the ridiculous censorship and the government intervention puts Manhunt 2 in this very rare pantheon of gaming curios, where the myth and the hype ultimately overshadows the actual content of the game. And because Rockstar continues to disregard this franchise, we'll never see Manhunt get another chance. Why do I keep returning to these games? Well, if you've looked around lately, you might have noticed that we don't need a Manhunt 3. We're already living in the real thing. Best to be prepared.
good for Happy Gilmore. Oh my God!
Boy, that was a happy video. Thanks for watching.